Hi everybody, it's Kelly here from Cuppa, and today I'm going to show you how to make the super simple boho top. And it is literally super simple. You're just going to be repeating 2 rows, and we're going to make one front panel and one back panel, and we're going to join them together, and then you can add a bit of fringe if you want, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, it's made to measure, and you can use any yarn and any hook that you want. It's very oversized to provide a nice drape. It's got about 20 centimeters positive E. So yeah, it's going to be lovely made in some cotton. Or you could use acrylic. I used acrylic for my first one, but I'm going cotton this time to see what the drape's like with it. There's going to be, you can add fringe at the end on the sleeves, or you can just leave it. It's fine if you're not a fringe kind of person, then you can leave it. I've provided all the measurements again that you're going to be working towards. So if you want to make this top for somebody else, then you can do that as well. So yeah, things that you're going to need are your yarn, of course. I've gone for some cotton yarn, which is like an aran / worsted weight yarn. I've gone for a 6.5 hook with mine because I want it to be quite drapey and yeah, nice for a little cover up in the summer. A pair of scissors, a tapestry needle for weaving in your ends, trusty tape measure to measure your garment, and just a couple of stitch markers for when you do the neckline. So, shall we crack on? Yes, let's do it. Right, we're going to be working up the back panel first. You're going to need to look in the written description to find the first measurement, which is, for me, I'm doing a size small, and it says 52 centimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a chain that reaches 52 centimeters. Let me get my tape measure out. So row 1 is basically going to consist of half double crochets. So if you would prefer to do a foundation half double crochet row rather than a chain, that's absolutely fine. You need to make sure that your final half double crochet foundation needs to end on an uneven number. Now if you're doing a chain like I'm doing, we're going to need to end on an even number. Okay, because we're going to be adding in 2 extra chains right at the end, and that's going to class as our first half double crochet, which will ultimately bring us to an odd number, because we do need to have an odd number of stitches. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but if you're chaining, make sure you chain to this measurement that you are provided, but make sure you end on an even number. But if you're doing a foundation row first, make sure you end on an odd number. Right, I'm doing a chain, so I need to get to an even number, and I'm doing a small, and it says to aim for 52 centimeters. So I'm just going to chain. I'm going to go a bit quiet because I need to count what I'm doing, because counting chains, if you lose track, is a nightmare. I usually end up undoing the whole lot and starting again. Okay, so let's go. Okay, mine's looking quite good. I'm going to stop at 54. which will eventually give me a stitch count of 55. Okay. Right, because I've done my chains, I've got 54. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 2 more, and that's going to class as my first half double crochet. So remember that that is now 1 half double crochet number 1, and I'm going to skip backwards. I'm going to skip over those 2 that I've just done, those 2 chains from the hook, and I'm going to go into the 3rd chain with a half double crochet. And that now classes as 2 half double crochets, and I'm going to put a half double crochet into every chain, and that should hopefully give me a stitch count of 55. Just keep going all the way in every single chain, a half double crochet. So yeah, every single chain, half double crochet, and I'm going to meet you back here once we've done row 1. Right, I'm going to stay with the same colour for my next row. You can change colour whenever you wish. That's absolutely fine. Do whatever you want because it's your top. So our next row is going to be a row of trebles, treble crochets and chain 1s. And we're going to create little window spaces, as I call them sometimes. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 5 for row 2. And that's going to be your first treble and chain 1. So we're going to chain 5, turn our work. Now, because we've stuck with the same colour, our chain is basically coming out of the first stitch. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to skip the next stitch and then go into the next stitch. Okay, so that kind of looks like you might need to skip that one. Don't skip that one because that is actually your first stitch. So you need to skip your second stitch and go into the 3rd one with a treble. So we're going to yarn over twice, go into the 3rd stitch, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, 1, 2, yarn over, pull through 2 more loops, yarn over, pull through 2 more loops, and there we go. Then we're going to chain 1, yarn over twice to get ready for our next treble, skip the next stitch, and then we're going to go in the next one and do our treble, chain 1, yarn over twice for your next treble, skip the next stitch, go in the next one with your treble, push it through, there we go. Again, chain 1, skip the next stitch and go in the next one with a treble, chain 1, skip the next stitch and go in the next one with your treble. We're going to do this all the way across this row. Keep chaining 1 in between and skipping a stitch in between. Lovely row this is, especially if you're using thicker yarn like I am. And once you get into the swing of it, you can bust them out pretty quickly. Keep going all the way across this row. I'm going to meet you back here once it's all done, once you've done row 2, okay? Right, I'm now coming up to the end of my row 2. I just wanted to quickly show you a about going in the last bit, because we did the chain row for the beginning. We did a chain, so you're going to be going in the top of your chain 2, which might be a little bit tricky to see because it's kind of bent up on itself. But remember, just look at this and skip your last stitch here, and then you're going to be going in the top of the chain 2 from the previous row. Okay, so I've just got to do a chain 1, one more treble, some skipping over that final stitch, and I'm going in the top of the chain 2 from the previous row. Sometimes I find it easier to literally go straight through the top of it, says me. Now I'm like, where is it? It's because I'm using cotton. I love cotton so much, but it is a bit splitty, but it is worth it. I don't think I've gone through that very well at all. No, I haven't. It's playing me up, because I'm recording, that's why. Playing me up. There we go. Squeeze it through there. Squeeze it. There you go. Get in there. Get in there. Ha-ha! There we are. So that is row 2. I'm going to stick with the same colour again and go in for row 3. Basically, row 2 and row 3, we're just going to keep repeating them until we reach the length measurement that I have provided in the written description below. Again, if you're making it for yourself, then you can work it up to whatever length you want it to be. So yeah, you could even turn it into a dress cover up if you wanted to, because it's got loads of positive ease on this. 20 centimeters positive ease, you know, so you could keep going with it if you wanted to. Make it a bikini cover up or swimsuit. Doesn't have to be a bikini, does it? Right, let's do row 3. Nice and simple. Lovely, simple, easy rows. The next row is just going to be trebles. No chain spaces in between, just trebles all the way across. Nice tall stitches. You're going to get this done so quickly. Right, so for row 3, we're going to chain 4. And that's going to be your first treble. And then we're going to turn our work. We're not going to go in there. That looks like your first stitch again, but it's not, because your treble is actually coming out of that stitch. You're going to go straight into the window space, I'm going to call it, or chain space, window space. If I say either, hopefully you'll know which one I mean. So we're going to go straight in that space with a treble. And then we're going to go straight into the next stitch with a treble. Next space, next chain space with a treble. Next stitch with a treble. Chain space with a treble. In the stitch with a treble. And just keep repeating that all the way down the row. Make sure you're keeping a count of your stitches as well, because you don't want to get like a few rows down and think, this isn't looking right, my edges aren't quite straight, it's looking a bit wonky and slanted. Just keep counting your stitches, even if you count them every other row. Which kind of would make more sense, wouldn't it? Because you've got your chain space row and then you've got just your straight row of trebles. Right, oh hang on, I haven't gone through that one. I'm just going to pop mine down and I'm going to continue just placing trebles in every chain space, every stitch, all the way across. I'm going to meet you when I get back, when I get to the end, okay? I'm not going to do my final stitch without you. I will come back when I reach here, okay? Right, I'm now right near the end of row 3. Just want to show you what it's going to look like. So I've got 2 more trebles that I need to place in here. So my first one is going to go in the space right in here. And this is the chain 5 that you've done. Okay, so I've basically just gone round the 5th chain. So you're going to need to place the final treble in the 4th chain. It's very important that you don't miss that stitch out. It can be very easily missed, which is why I suggest you always make sure you count your stitches. There we go. I'm actually going to change colour, and the way I'm going to do it means I'm going to work my colour into my final stitch. So I am now going to undo that one and show you it again, but changing colour as well. I'm going to go for this lovely pinky purple. Just put that one to one side a minute. Get my new colour ready to grab. Right, so I'm going to change colour by working my new one into the final stitch. You don't have to do it this way. If you've got a certain way you like to change colour, then do it that way. It's fine. There is no right or wrong way to crochet, is there? As long as we all get the same outcome, that's the main thing. So I'm just undoing that final stitch. Right, so I'm going to go back in for my treble and I'm going to add my new colour right at the very end of the stitch. So again, I'm going back into the 4th chain. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull my yarn through 2 loops, yarn over, pull it through 2 more loops. Now this is the final part of the stitch. So I'm going to drop the previous colour that I've been using. I'm going to grab the new one, leave a bit of a tail end on it, hook it over, grab your working end that's attached to the yarn. It can be a little bit fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, it'll be fine. I'm just going to pull that through and finish the stitch like that. That's it. And right, so next up, I might just tighten that just a little bit while I'm here. So the next row is going to be exactly the same as row 2. We're going to be doing the trebles and a chain 1 to make this little window stitch effect, as I like to call it again. So chain 5, turn your work. So again, skip the next stitch, stitch number 2, and go straight into number 3 with a treble. I'm going to work up a few stitches and then I'm going to come back to my ends and just tighten those up a little bit. But I'm just going to work a few stitches first before I do that. Chain 1, get ready for my next treble. Skip the next stitch and go in the next one with a treble. Chain 1, skip next stitch, go in the next one with a treble. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, go in again with a treble. Chain 1, skip next stitch, go in with a treble. Nice and easy. Now I've worked up a few stitches. I'm just going to take that off there for a second. That's my old yarn. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull these a bit tighter, like so. I'm going to snip my blue off. Where's my trusty scissors? Now what you do here is optional. I mean, some people say just make sure you weave in these ends really well. Well, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat like that, so I am going to put a little knot in it as well. And then I will weave them in. Nice tight knot. so it don't come undone. And then those ends will get weaved in thoroughly. Okay, so now I'm going to continue the next row. Now this is the only thing, isn't it? Get ends everywhere, and I always say this: weave your ends in as you go. If you're changing colour, just weave them in as you go and you won't even notice them. I know people get a bit carried away, but oh my goodness, if I finished this whole panel and there was ends all down, oh, I couldn't deal with it. I have to weave them as I go. So anyway, I am going to carry on with my chain space, treble, chain space, treble, blah, 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 blah. And I'll meet you back right at the very end of this row again, okay? Right, I'm right at the very end again of row, what row are we on now? 4. Okay, so what I need to do, oh, I'm getting all hooked up. I've done a treble and a chain 1. And this is where our chain 4, is that a chain 4? Yeah, I'm getting myself all confused there. So yeah, we've got our chain 4 here. I'm going to skip the final stitch, and then your next treble, your last treble, is going right in the top of the chain 4 from the previous row. So skipping that stitch and going in the chain 4, I'm going to twist mine round a bit and shove it straight through the top. That's what I did. That's what I was meant to do right at the beginning when I couldn't get it in there. Now it's just gone straight in. Lovely. Oh, there we go. It's looking lovely, isn't it? So I'm staying with the same colour again. Next row is just the trebles going straight across, nice and easy. So you're going to chain 4, and again you're not going in stitch number 1 because you've basically got your chain coming out of there already. You're going to go straight in this chain space with a treble. And then straight in the next stitch of a treble. And then next chain space with a treble. Next stitch of a treble. And then next chain space of a treble. Next stitch. And just keep repeating that all the way down to the end. Again, I'm going to meet you when I get to the end. Right, I won't do my last stitch without you again. We'll go over that one again, okay? See you back here in a second. Right, I'm right at the end of my row again. I've got 2 more trebles to place. This is where we did our chain 5 on the previous row. So I'm going to enter my treble. I'm going to put my treble in this chain space gap, which is technically the chain 5. It's going to go around. And then my last treble has got to go in the 4th chain, which mine is looking a little bit tight there. Let's just hope I can get it in. I'm going to twizzle it round a bit. I always find that's quite a handy tip. It's just to twizzle it round and go straight through the top. Ooh, there we go. We're in. Amazing. Now I'm going to change colour. So I'm going to finish this last stitch with my new colour. So let me just pull it through the first 4 like that. I've got 2 left. I'm going to get my new colour. And pull that through the final stitch. And then grab my working end. There we go. And next is the window space row again, nice and easy, chain 5, turn my work carefully because I've got loose ends hanging about. And then we're going to skip the first stitch, which is looking a bit crazy because I've changed my yarn, so it's all kind of a bit stretched there. Skip the second stitch and go into the third one with your first treble. Chain 1, skip the next stitch and go in the next one with a treble. Chain 1, skip stitch, go in the next one with a treble. Chain 1, skip stitch, next one with a treble. Nice and easy. Hopefully you've got the hang of the pattern now. It's just those 2 rows repeated. And if you're using a thicker yarn and a chunkier needle like me, what am I on about? I don't even knit. A chunkier hook, then it works up so much quicker. Because don't we all love fast projects? I do. Okay, now I've done a few. I'm just going to tighten up this end a bit more. So I'm going to cut off my previous colour. Just pull them tight a little bit, like that, tighten them up. I'm just going to put a little knot in there as well. Again, if you don't like the knot, you haven't got to do it, but to me it just feels a bit more secure. There we go. Now I've got all tangled, I've got loads of ends, I've still not tucked any ends in yet. What am I doing to myself? Let's move that colour out the way a minute. So I'm going to continue with this row and I'm going to meet you right at the end again, right at this end. Okay, right, I'm right near the end of my row again, so I need to chain 1, skip this final stitch right here and then go straight in the top of the chain 4 from the previous row with my final treble. Again, I'm twisting it a bit and going straight for the top. Straight in there, lovely. There we go. So hopefully you're getting the hang of it now. It's going to be those 2 rows repeated. Next row is going to be just a row of half double crochets and then your window space row again, half double crochets. What am I talking about? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Not half double crochet. It's because I was looking at this. Row of treble crochets and then your window space rows. Okay, just repeat rows 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 until you get to the length of the back panel measurement. Now I've got that in the written description. Again, if you're making it for yourself, then stop whenever you want. It's up to you. But I'm going to go with my measurements that I've made. I'm making a small and my back panel measurement says I need to get to 43 centimeters. Well, I know I'm definitely not 43 centimeters, but I'm just going to show you that we're going to measure it just from the middle and down. I'm like about 15, so I've got loads to go yet. I'm about 15, okay? Now, don't worry if you don't get that exact measurement because these are tool stitches, you know? You could go over it, you could be slightly under it. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So, yeah, just get as close to that measurement as you possibly can. And then that's it. I'll meet you back here when your back panel is completed, okay? One more thing before I disappear is if you're going to be weaving your ends in as you go, you're going to want to be weaving them all on the same side, and that will be your wrong side, which is going to be the inside of your top. Now you decide what way you want it to be. There's no right or wrong answer for this. I personally have picked it so that my row of trebles that go straight across, treble, 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 I want them to be facing the right side on the outside of my top. I personally think it looks neater that way, but if you want to have it so they face the back, that's fine. Do it whatever way you wish. There is no right or wrong way for this to be. It's however you want it to be, because ultimately it's your top, okay? But I will just say, if you're weaving in your ends, make sure that they all go on the same side, and that is going to be the wrong side of your top, which is going to be inside. No one's going to see them if they start poking out a little bit as they do them pesky ends. You know what I like. If you loved to work with colour, you have to deal with the blooming ends, don't you? So yeah, pick whatever side you want and weave all your ends on the back side, inside, wrong side, whatever you want to call it. So I'll meet you back here, okay, when the back panel's done. Right, I'm getting close to my measurement, very close actually. And another thing that I need to mention is the last row of your back panel and your front panel, because they're going to be the same amount anyway, but the last row on your back panel needs to end on a row with all of the treble crochets, no window spaces, just the treble crochets. Well, I say it's going to be your last row, it's actually going to be the second from last row, but we're going to try and get the measurement, if you're using my measurements anyway, my length measurements. Mine is a small and it says 43. We need to get close to that one. You can't quite see mine because I can't fit it all on the screen. I'm at 42, so I'm going to go over mine a little bit. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, okay? So basically, your last row is going to need to be the straight row of treble crochets that is closest to that length measurement. If you're using my measurements, that is. You might be doing your own thing and working it to whatever length you wish. Just make sure that you end with the row of trebles, but don't fasten off, not unless you want to change colour, because the final row is going to be a row of half double crochets. Just like how we started it at the beginning, we had a row of half double crochets. We're going to end the back panel with a row of trebles in every single bit, not the chain space row, and then a half double crochet row on top of that. So I need to do one more treble row, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll do the half double crochet row together. Right, I've just done my row of trebles all the way across. I've just got to do my final stitch because I've decided to change colour for my final row of half double crochets, just to give myself more ends to weave in. Why do we do this, hey, to ourselves? But I'm sure it's going to look amazing, so it'll be worth it in the end. Let me just get my new colour and do my final stitch on my treble section. Oh, my yarn's just disappeared. Where did that just disappear to? Sorry, I'm talking to myself. Right, just finish this stitch. Get my new yarn that just randomly disappeared away from the table. More fingers and thumbs, I feel like. Let's get my working end of my yarn. Just tighten that up a little bit. Okay, so the final row is going to be half double crochets. So what we're going to do is chain 2, and that's going to be your first half double crochet. Just going to turn my work. I'm not going into the base of this stitch because obviously the chain is classed as the first half double crochet. So I'm going to go straight into the second stitch with a half double crochet. As I say, after doing all these trebles, you kind of get a bit confused over yarning over. It's so easy to keep yarning over twice. So I do apologise if you find yourself yarning over twice and being like, oh no, I'm doing a half double, not a treble. So yeah, half double in every single stitch. Oh, I've just got a bit. Oh, hang on, let me redo that one. Just kind of split my yarn. Oh, I can't pick it up now. Right, half double crochet in every stitch across. Kind of have to take my time with cotton, I find, because it is so splitty, but if you find the right cotton, then it's lovely. Not always great if you get crispy cotton, but this one's so soft and drapey. It's worth it. It's worth taking your time over it and using it. I'm just going to go back and tighten up where I have changed my colour. Now I've got a few rows in. Move that over there a second. I'll just snip that off. Oh, that's one thing I need to invest in, is a nice pair of scissors. I see some lovely ones and just not got round to treating myself to a nice pair of scissors. Okay, so we're just going to continue doing half double crochets along the final row, and I'll meet you back here when we get to the end of this row. Okay, right, I've just finished my final row of half double crochets. The next section is going to be the front panel, and we're going to work it up exactly the same as the back panel, but it's going to be 8 centimeters shorter. It's not going to stay 8 centimeters shorter, but we need those 8 centimeters to add the neck shaping to it. Okay, so I'm going to now take the measurement of my back panel. If you could do the same, because I was working towards 43 centimeters. I know I've gone over that a little bit. That doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to take the measurement straight down the middle of your back panel. I'm at 44 centimeters, so I've already gained 1 centimeter. That's quite good, actually. I'm at 44 from a back panel. I need to minus 8 centimeters, so that gives me a new measurement of 36. Yeah, 36 centimeters. So I'm now going to go back. You can rewind the video if you like and basically do exactly the same thing as what we've just done. But we are now working towards that new measurement, which is 8 centimeters shorter than your back panel. So if you go ahead and do that, work up your front one identical to the back panel. Rewind the video if you like and rewatch the back one, but remember that you're working it 8 centimeters shorter. Don't fasten off, because you might want to stick with the same color for the neck shaping. Okay, so when you get there, don't fasten off. If you decide you want to change colour, then we can do that, can't we, when we get there. So I'll see you back here when you've worked up your front panel 8 centimeters shorter than the back one. Okay, see you soon. Right, one thing that I need to mention about when you're working up your chain for your first row of the front panel, you need to make sure that it is the same width as your back panel. Because basically I just did this exact thing. I worked up my 54 chains for me, because I'm doing my small, and that's how many I use for my back panel. So 54, and then got my 55 stitches in there, and it was about 10 centimeters smaller than my back panel. I was like, oh no. So clearly I'd done my chains a lot tighter for my front panel compared to my back panel. So just be cautious of that. Work up your chains loosely, or however you've done it to match your back panel, and just line them up and make sure that they're at the same width, because I'd hate for you to work up your entire front panel, put it together, and it's just a different width, because the top's not going to work, is it? They both need to be the same width. So yes, that's your tip. Now you can carry on with your front panel, and I'll meet you back here once you've done your front panel, which is, remember, is 8 centimeters shorter than the back one. See you soon. I'm making good progress with my front panel, and I know I said that the front panel needs to be 8 centimeters shorter than the back panel, Again, that's going to be around 8 centimetres. You're probably not going to get that number, but close to 8 centimetres, because we're working with tall stitches and the front panel needs to end on the straight row of trebles, not with the window spaces in. Technically speaking, it doesn't really have to end like that, but I've made it that way so that when it comes to doing the neckline shaping, we are all working from the exact same stitches. Otherwise, some of you might be have like a different row to what I'm showing, and then that's not quite fair on you, because you then have to kind of figure it out a bit more. So if we all got the same stitches in front of us, then it's all going to work nicely for everybody, isn't it? So I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I am using my back panel. Now this works easy for me because I've changed colour, so I can easily see my rows. If you're using one colour, you're probably going to have to count all your rows, because ultimately your front panel will eventually end up with the exact same amount of rows as your back panel, but we're going to cut out a section in the middle of the front panel, which is going to create the neck hole. So I'm going to get my tape measure. I'm going to measure my back panel 8 centimetres down to here, okay? So mine's quite awkward. It's fell right in the middle of the treble row. My voice is disappearing. Yeah, mine's fell right in the middle of the treble row, which I'm quite pleased it has, really, so you can see what your options are. Now, I could either have a shorter neckline, and that will be my last row, or I could have a much deeper neckline and have this one as my last row. It's completely up to you. If you go for a bigger neckline and you think, oh, it's a little bit too big, right at the end of this piece, we're going to be adding rows around the neckline right at the end of the video. So you can always add extra rows to bring it in more. Or you can just go for a shorter one and just add 1 or 2 rows around your neckline. I've decided I'm going to go a little bit shorter for mine. So I need to keep working my front panel until I reach this row. And that is going to be my final row. Yes, that's right. That's going to be my final row before I start doing the neckline shaping. Or it could have been this one, but I've gone for a shorter one. Okay. So if you could do the same thing, measure your back panel for 8 centimetres, see whereabouts it sits. Remember that your last row is going to be the row of trebles, not the window spaces. And decide, do you want a smaller neckline or do you want a bigger neckline? Now, and if you have a bigger one, you can still add extra rows at the end to make it bring it in a bit more. Oh my goodness, that's my dog. Lily. Sorry about that, everybody. It's the postman, that's why he's barking. Right, I've done my front panel as far as I can before we're adding in the neckline. So what you're going to need to do now is find in the written description the measurement for the neckline for the size that you are working up. I'm working up a size small. My measurement says 18 centimetres. Okay, so I'm just going to remove my back panel because I don't need that at the moment. Little tip, which is actually completely and utterly common sense, but I just made this mistake. If you're changing colour for your next row and you're changing colour the same way that I have been doing it, make sure you work up your final stitch before you do your measurements, because I just left my final stitch and was going to do it and add my colour in when I started working up the neckline. And then I realised I had an extra stitch left over because I hadn't included the final stitch. So make sure that final stitch is there before you measure anything. Common sense, but sometimes it just kind of flies out the window, doesn't it? So my neckline measurement for a size small is 18 centimetres. So I'm just going to come from this side. Oh, hang on, before I say to go any further, you're going to need your tape measure and 2 stitch markers. Nearly forgot that. Don't want to have to record it again. Right, so I'm now going to measure 19 centimeters from one edge. Okay, no, not 19, 18. 18. I think I need to go back to bed. Right, so for me that falls on this stitch. I'm going to place my stitch marker in here, but it may not stay as this stitch. I now need to count from this stitch back to here again, and I'm going to need to have an odd number of stitches and able to continue the same stitch pattern. Okay, so you're going to need to count the stitches and make sure that you've got an odd number. If you've got an even number, well, that's fine, just go like beside it. I'd probably pick the one beside it rather than going in. I'd go out. So yeah, pick the one beside it, but I'm just going to go quiet while I count my stitches. I've ended up with 20. Let me just double check one more time. Right, I've ended up with 20 on mine. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out and carefully place it into the one to the left of it. And that's going to give me 19 stitches. Your stitch count is probably going to be different to mine, but mine has come up as 19. Now I'm going to take my other stitch marker and I'm going to come to the opposite side. Just check you can see, just about squeezing it in. I'm now going to count 19 stitches across here. Across here. Right, I'm going to place my stitch marker in the 19th stitch. I'm just going to double check it one more time. Yeah, spot on. Okay, so basically we're just going to be continuing the stitch pattern, but just in this little section here, and then we're going to move over and do the same thing on this side. And you need to work up whatever amount of rows you have left on your back panel, so that ultimately they will both end up with the same amount of rows. They're both going to be the same length. For me, my final row on my back panel compared to the front panel, I finished my front panel with this row right here. So that means I've got one chain space row, one more row of trebles, and one row of half double crochets. Now you might have a few more rows than me because, like I say, I've used a thicker yarn, so my stitches are bigger. So you might have a few more. Don't panic if you do, that's fine. Just keep working it up until you have the same amount of rows as your back panel. So for me, I need to work up an extra 3 rows. Right, I'm just going to undo this one because I haven't changed colour yet. If I can find the end of my yarn, where are we? I've got a bit higgledy-piggledy because I had to undo a load of it. But you don't see that because that bit's getting deleted. Right, where are we? So I'm just going to take that stitch out because I'm changing colour. And I'm going to redo it, but add my new colour in right at the end. Just grab my new yarn. Right, so what we're going to do is chain 5. Turn my work. I'm going to skip the second stitch and go into the third stitch with a treble. Just continuing the same stitch pattern that you've been doing. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, go in the next one with a treble. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, go into the next one with your treble. And we're going to keep doing this until we reach the stitch marker. And as long as you've got an odd number, then you should end up straight in that stitch marker. Hang on, I've got yarn getting tangled. Oh, I'm all coming undone. Chain 1, and then I'm placing my final treble in with the stitch marker. And that's as far as we're going. So row 2 of the neckline shaping, chain 4, turn your work and go back along this little section. Treble in the first chain space, treble in the next stitch, treble in the first chain space, or I said the next chain space, not the first one, treble in the stitch. Just like what we've been doing. Repeat that all the way to the end of the row. Almost coming to the end of mine. Oh. I've got one stitch left and I need to change colour. What I also need to do is just quickly snip off my blue here. Otherwise I'm going to be attached to like 3 different yarns. And I can see myself getting a bit fuddled. Okay, so for me, I'm now on the final row, which is the half double crochet. You might have another chain space and another treble to do, or maybe a few more. But for me, I'm now on the final row, okay? Let me just get my yarn because I changed colour, didn't I? So let me get my new colour. I'm going to finish off my final stitch in the top of the chain 4. Just move that over a bit. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, through this one. Twizzle it around and go through the top. Lovely. Right, let me pick up my new yarn. Lots of ends again to weave in, but it's all worth it in the end. So final row, once you get there, chain 2, that's your first half double crochet, turn your work, go into the next stitch with a half double crochet, and every single stitch with half double crochets. all the way across this little section. Just taking it nice and steady with mine again because I'm using cotton yarn. Just find it easier. Just take my time with it. Got 2 stitches left, which is an actual stitch, and then the top of the chain from the previous row, top of the chain 4, push that through there. Go on, go in, there you go. Bit tight that one was, but we're in. Oh, my cotton's starting to split. There we go, I've done it. Right, let me just snip my end off and secure it. And just snip this one off and tighten these ends up here. Oh, again, my scissors are failing me. Just tighten that up a bit. Oh, and there we go. I've got loads of ends hanging out. We'll just ignore them. That is the first part of the neckline shaping. Nice and easy, hey? Nice and easy peasy. Then we'll come back and we're going to do this section. Right, this is what you should have so far. One section done of the neckline shaping. I've weaved in most of my ends, so calm has been restored over here, for me anyway. Right, we're going to do the neck side. Now, because our stitches, we worked this first row on this side, we need to turn your work so you're facing like this, and then we need all our stitches to be on the same side. So for this next section over here, we're going to go straight in where the stitch marker is, and that's going to be your first stitch, because if you went in the corner on this side just like you did with that one, then your stitches for each row are going to be facing opposite sides, and you don't want that. Okay, so we're going to start in the stitch marker. So I'm going to get my yarn. Hang on, I've got a knot. Let me just snip a bit off. Got yarn dramas over here. I've just found a big old knot. Right, let me get rid of that. Right, we're going to place the yarn on the hook with a slip knot and attach it in the same stitch as the stitch marker with a slip stitch. And then you just repeat exactly the same as what we've just done. I'll do a couple of stitches with you. Chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip your next stitch and go in the next one with the treble. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, go in the next one with the treble. Chain 1, skip the next one, go in with a treble. Okay, so we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to repeat exactly the same amount of stitches as you've got this side. So I've got 3 rows to do, and then I'm going to fasten off. Okay, and I'll meet you back here when you've got the exact same bit here as what you have here. Okay, I've finished my front panel and the neckline shaping, so you should have something that looks pretty similar to what I've got here. I took my stitch markers out because we don't need those in there anymore. So what we're going to do now is seam the front panel and the back panel together. You can do it the way I'm doing it, Or if you have a preferred seaming method that you like to use that. There's no rules. It's your top. Again, do whatever you wish with it. Okay? I'm just going to show you how I'm going to seam mine. And like I say, if you want to do it a different way, then that's absolutely fine. I really don't mind. So I'm going to need my back panel first. And I'm going to need the right side of my back panel facing me. So what is that? That is my right side. That's the one I decided because I wanted all of my trebles to be facing outwards. So that's the right side of my back panel. Now I need to place my front panel down so that the right side is touching this right side. You call it right sides together. Okay, so I need to find my front panel, get my words muddled again. I need to find the right side of my front panel. Oh, what am I talking about? I need to find the right side of my front panel. I think I need to go back to bed. That's the back side, that's the right side. So my right sides need to be touching each other. Right sides together. So that means that the inside, the wrong side, the back side, whatever you want to call it, is currently facing me. And that's the right side, and that's the right side. Right sides together. Okay, so we're going to be doing the shoulder seams first. What I am going to do is just quickly measure out my armhole while I'm here. Might as well do it while it's all laid out flat. Just try and line my edges up, which is quite easy for me because I've changed colour the same amount of times. Getting there. Where are we? There we go. Right. Now you're going to need to find the measurement for your armhole for the size that you are making. I'm making a small. My armhole says 20.5 centimetres. So you're going to need your tape measure and you're going to need a couple of stitch markers. And we're just going to measure down one side. Just got to measure one side. For me, 20.5. If you're doing a different size to a size small, then your number's going to be different to that, but you'll find it in the written description part of the video. So for me, 20.5 is about here. Again, tall stitches, so you know the number closest to it, or the stitches that's closest to it. Mine is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a stitch marker. And I'm going to place it around the front and the back panel together. Like so. I don't need to measure the other side because I'm just going to place my other stitch marker in exactly the same place on this side. Which is around this one and around the back one as well. So we've marked out the armhole. It's quite a big armhole, nice and drapey. So yeah. Now what we're going to do is seam the shoulder seams, which is just going to be here to here and then here to here. Now remember, you can do it however you wish. I'm just going to do mine with my hook because I love using my hook for everything. I'm not a massive fan of using a needle, but if you want to use a needle, that is absolutely fine. I'm just going to do a slip stitch for mine, a slip stitch seam. Right then, so you're going to need both pieces together. I'm going to go in my first stitch, which is the top of the chain 2. Make sure you don't just go straight in the first stitch, otherwise you're going to have a little bit there left over. You got to go, if you've got your chain 2 in front of you, that's the first stitch you're going in. Through the top of the chain 2 and through the first stitch on the back panel. And I'm just going to slip stitch. If you're doing a slip stitch seam like me, try to have a bit of a looser tension. You don't want it too tight. otherwise it's going to get a bit bunched up. But I'm going through both of my like the V shape, both of them. I'm going through both of them on each side with a slip stitch. Through the next one with a slip stitch, the next one through both panels, slip stitch. Remember to keep it quite loose. I know if you're seaming, the urge to pull it really tight is quite immense because you think, oh, it needs to stay together, but no, it'll be fine. If you have it too tight, it's going to get bunched up, and we don't want it to do that. So yeah, I'm just going to place a slip stitch through front and both front and back panels all the way across until I reach this little end. So go through the front, through the back, slip stitch, through the front, through the back, slip stitch. The tricky thing is just keeping an eye on your stitches and that you're not missing one out, because if you're going to miss one out, it usually tends to be on the back panel. Well, it does for me. I'm like, oh no, how did I do that? But luckily we're not seaming too much here, are we? It's just a little one. I've got 2 stitches left on my, oh no I haven't, I've got 3 stitches left to go through on both panels. There we go. That's the first one done. So I'm going to fasten off. Just make sure you don't, if you've got a little tail hanging here, make sure you don't clip that by mistake. I've done that before. Clipped it and then been like, oh, how am I going to weave that in? I've clipped the wrong piece of yarn. These things happen, don't they? Right, tighten that up. I'm just going to go back to the beginning. Which one is it? Is it that one? No, this one? Yeah, no, I've got 3 ends here. Oh, there we go, there it is. Just tighten that one up as well. There you go, and that's what my seam looks like. But remember, you can do it however you wish. Now I'm going to go back to the other side. I'm going to do mine, because my seam, it doesn't matter which way you do it. I'm just going to turn mine round and go from the corner. Or if you want to, you can count the number of stitches and place a stitch marker in here. And you can start from this way and work your way across. Just be sure that you've got the right amount of stitches in the back panel. Otherwise you might get to the end and be like, ah, I've got 1 too many stitches. So I'm just going to cheat and turn mine round, and then I'm going to go from this way. So seam that one up as well, and I'll meet you back here to do the side seams. Right, I have just seamed my shoulder seams. They're all done and dusted. I've tucked my ends in as well. Good. Oh no! I've missed one, look. Don't believe it. Right, now we're going to seam from the bottom of the sides all the way up to your stitch marker to do the side seam, and then that will leave this bit open. Can you see that okay? I'm not sure if I'm quite in the screen there. That will leave this bit open at the top for your armhole. Okay, so if you've got a preferred seaming method for seaming up your side seams, again, go ahead and use it. If you want to do what I'm doing, then that's absolutely fine. And we need to make sure we're still working on the wrong sides, and that your front panel and your back panel are still right sides touching, right sides together. Right, because I've changed colour, we want to try and make the seam invisible, if possible. I've got to be honest, this isn't really my strongest point. Sometimes my seam still pokes through, but yeah, it's all right. I don't mind too. I'm not that fussed really. I'm just going to lay them out side by side like this. Is that in the screen? I think so, yeah. And what we're going to aim to do is go through top loops, okay? The top loops of these treble bars, I'm going to call them, okay? The treble bars, try and go through a top loop, and we're going to work from this side and then move over to this side, and then we're going to go up a bit and then go across and keep working all our way up. Don't want to pull it too tight again, because if we pull it really tight, it's going to all ruck up, which we don't want that to do. So I'm going to use a needle for this one. I know I don't normally like to use them, but I think it's probably better for this kind of seam where we're trying to make it invisible. And you probably do better if you're going to use a needle to not have a sharp tip on the end. Mine's a little bit sharp, so, but it's not too bad, because we don't want to split the yarn wherever possible. Okay, hopefully you can see this okay. It's a bit tricky, obviously, I know, because I'm a bit far away, but I'm going to go in a top loop on one side. Doesn't matter which one, I'm just going to pick any. Try not to split my yarn, which is going to be very tricky for me because I'm using cotton. There, look at that, it's a bit awkward. Look, I'm going to pull that through, leaving a tail at the end. Probably got too much of a tail on mine, but oh well, it's better to have too much than not enough. Don't have to undo the whole thing and start again. And then I'm going to pick up my other side, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing, trying to aim for the same stitch that I've just gone through the top of. Not going to pull it crazy tight. Right, that's one. Now I'm going to come back onto the other side that we've just started on, and I'm going to go through another top one. I'm going to go through this one, I think. Doesn't matter which one you go through, it really doesn't. Like so. Not going to pull it crazy tight. I'm going to go through that exact same loop on the other side, like so. I'm going to go through this bit. Again, you go through any loop you want, as long as it's on the top, then we hopefully should be okay. I'm going to go for the exact same one on this side. Work my way up and try and mirror the same stitch on the other side. Hang on, I'm splitting my yarn on that one. There we go. Now I'm starting to wonder if I have actually cut enough. I'm just going to keep doing this all the way up until you reach your stitch marker. Whilst hoping and praying that I've placed them in the right place so that you won't see this pink yarn against the blue. What one do I just go through? Let me just lay that down a second and have another look. That one. So yeah, keep going backwards and forwards. Which stitch is that? My pink section is going to be nice and easy because it's the same one. Just going to pull that like that a minute. See, once you pull it on both ends like that, that then makes this nice and straight. I'm just going to check to see what it looks like. Oh, you can see it just a tiny little bit. I've come through a little bit on mine, but I'm not going to worry about that. Just check it again. I have come through a tiny little bit. But yeah, I'm not going to worry about that. That doesn't bother me. Right, I'm on my pink section now, so it's not going to be as tricky for me. if I could just stop splitting the yarn. Aiming for the top loops only. Keep going back and forth. One side to the other. Making sure that each row is being lined up as well. That's very important, especially if you've used the same colour. You might start to like get it a little bit higher one side and lower on the other side, and you're like, oh no. So make sure that all the rows are lining up. Okay, so just keep doing that same thing, just going through a top loop on one side, top loop on the other side. Keep working your way up until you reach your stitch marker, and then you can fasten off. Okay, I'll meet you back here once you've done both sides. Right then, both sides should now be seamed, hopefully. So what we need to do next is turn it the right way out. So let's just turn that like that. Get it so the right side is now facing outwards. Now what I suggest for you to do is try it on and see what you think. I mean, I just tried mine on and I could happily leave it just like this. I put it on and I was like, I really like it just as it is. But I am going to show you, if you want to do so, how to add a little bit around the neckline. I mean, when I tried mine on, I was literally like, I really like it like this. But I'm going to show you how to add some, like just a row of single crochet, or you can add as many rows of single crochet around the neck. We're going to do a little decrease as well. But yeah, try it on, see what you think. If you think, yeah, I do want to finish off a little bit around the neckline, then keep watching. Right, so I've got my top so that the front is facing me. What we're going to do is I'm going to pick it up from this side, which, looking at it straight on, is going to be the left side. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the left side and I'm going to kind of twizzle it round like this. So this is my front bit, that's my seam, and that is the back panel. So I'm going to go in through my seam because I've got a bit of a chunky bit of a seam going on there. I'm going to go in through my seam, and what I'm going to do is the first stitch is going to be single crochet 2 together. So basically we're just going to add a bit of a single crochet 2 together at each corner. 2 back corners, 2 front corners. Okay, so I'm going in through my seam with a slip stitch. Says me. I think I've gone through it a bit funny. Let's try again. Fingers and thumbs again. Right, a slip stitch. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to go straight back down into this same stitch, and I'm going to do a single crochet 2 together into the next one. So I'm going to go straight back down, start off a single crochet, but I'm not going to pull my yarn through these 2 loops. I'm now going to insert my hook into the first stitch of the back panel, yarn over, draw up another loop. Now I've got 3 loops on my hook, and I'm going to pull through all 3, and that's 1 decrease stitch. Now I'm going to keep single crocheting along the back neckline until I reach the stitch just before the seam. Okay, and then we're going to do single crochet 2 together in that one as well. So a single crochet in every stitch until you reach the final stitch before the seam at the corner. single crochet. Need to keep a little eye out for this stitch. Maybe it'd help to put stitch markers in, really, wouldn't it, I suppose? Probably be easier rather than eyeballing it. I usually end up going too far and I'm like, oh no, I meant to do a decrease there. Get in there. Right, that's my stitch before the seam. So I've got 3 stitches left of single crochet. 2, 3. Okay, so I've got 1 stitch left on the back panel and then the seam again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a single crochet 2 together. So let me show you again. I'm going to go straight through the first stitch, draw up a loop, got 2 loops. Now I'm going to go through my seam bit, around my seam bar, whatever you want to call it, and draw up another loop. And I'm going to pull through all 3 loops, and that's just joined that bit together. Now we are on the trebles, so we need to evenly place 3 single crochets along each treble bar. I've only got 2 to do. You might have more than that. Just depends how many rows you added for your neckline. Okay, so I'm going to place 3 single crochets around this first treble bar. 1, 2, 3, and then 3 around my next one. Oh, actually, hang on, no, because I'm at the stitch before my corner loop. I'm getting confused now. Because this is my last treble bar, I'm just going to do 2 single crochets. And then my next stitch is going to be a single crochet 2 together. So I'm going around this bar one more time, drawing up a loop. So I've got 2 loops on my hook. And then I'm going to be putting my hook through the first stitch on the front with another single crochet and join them 2 together by coming through all 3 loops. And now I'm going to work my way across the front row until I get to the last stitch at the front and the treble bar on the left hand side. And there is where we'll be doing our next single crochet 2 together. So single crochets all across the front in every stitch. This is why I wanted it to end on a treble row, you see, so that we all was working into trebles. Otherwise some of us might have had window spaces here, and then you'd have to work it out yourself as to where you was going, what you was doing. It just seemed easier if we was all working with the exact same stitches. Keep putting my single crochets in. Right, I'm now at the final stitch and then the next treble bar. So I'm going to do a single crochet 2 together in that final stitch of the front panel and around the treble bar coming up on the left hand side. Single crochet 2 together. That means I only need to put 2 single crochets around this bar. And then 3 single crochets around this one, my next bar, and any other bars that you might have. 3 single crochets like so, and that's brought me to here. I'm just going to place 1 more single crochet in mine, otherwise I'm going to have a little bit of a gap. You might not have a gap, but I have. I think I might have put mine first one in a little bit too far, but that doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter at all. Now I'm going to join to the first single crochet 2 together with a slip stitch. And there we go, we've got a little bit of a neck bit going around there. And then you can do that as many times as you want. If you want to add a bit more, then just keep doing single crochets. Don't even worry about doing any more decreases. You can just keep adding some single crochets if you feel like you want your neckline to be a bit smaller. You can add as many rows of single crochets as you want. Again, it's your top, so do whatever you wish. I'm just going to do one, so I'm going to fasten off and weave in any ends. Got a couple, nothing too major. If you decide that you don't want fringe on your arms, on your sleeves, then you're done. Unless you want to add anything else, I mean, you could always add a bit of fringe around the bottom if you want. Again, it's totally up to you. It's your top. But I'm not decided what I'm going to do yet. I'm going to show you how to add fringe. I'm going to do one sleeve on mine, and I'm going to decide from there because I actually really like it how it is. I've already made one with my fringe, and I'm in two minds whether or not just to leave this one as it is, because I do really like it. But I am definitely going to show you how to add some fringe around the sleeves. Okay, so I'll meet you back here in a bit. Right, if you've decided to stick around and add a bit of fringe onto your sleeves, then that's what we're going to be doing right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep fringe on mine. I'm going to do one and we'll have a little look and see what I think, because I really like mine how it is. But then I might put the fringe on and go, oh, I will like that too. So I'm going to have a little go and see what I think. Okay, so this is just me. You can do it any way you want, but I find it easy to have something to wrap my yarn around. For example, here I've got a little small games case. I've even been known to use my phone, just wrap it around my phone. It's just so much easier. Or if you want to measure it out, I would suggest going to, you can either do like 14 inches if you prefer to work with centimeters, maybe do about 34 centimeters, which is about this long. And then at least that way, if you think it's a little bit too long, you can trim it up. And sometimes when you pull the fringe in, it might get a little bit hooked one side or not go on as even as you wish. And you're like, oh, I have got to trim it up anyway. So I think it's always best to have more compared to not having enough. So I'm going to take one colour. I'm going to prepare my yarn for fringe making. So I'm just going to take my case that I've got here, my little case, or my phone, or a tablet, like lengthways, whatever. A book, maybe even a book. Just use a little book. I'm just going to wrap it round here. Just keep wrapping it round. If you don't make enough, then you can always come back and do it again. Keep wrapping it around. Now, I'm not sure if I'm doing fringe or not, so I'm just going to stop there for the time being. I'm going to snip my little end off right there, about there. Then I'm just going to come under here. You're going to need some sharp scissors as well for this. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, really, for the fringe. I'm just going to come under here. I'm just going to snip one end, which has left me with this. Like so. Right, because I've used 3 colours, I'm going to do it with all 3 of my colours. Let's get this one out. Do exactly the same thing. Just do a little bit for me because I'm not sure if I'm keeping the fringe. Snip it off. Come under here and snip that off there. Add that to my little fringe pile. Last one for me, because like I say, I only use 3 colours. Wrap that round there. A few times. Oh no! I've just ruined my little fringe pile. It's okay. It's okay. Snip. snip. Right, now that's what I'm going to be using. I like to take a smaller hook when I'm doing my fringe as well. So let me find a smaller hook. How small? I don't really know. Where are my hooks? I'm so underprepared right now. Maybe not too small, maybe not too big. That's a 5.5. Wait, have I got a 4 anywhere? I'm going to go with 4. Yes, go with 4. Not too small, not too big. Okay. I'm going to take my top. And I'm going to go right in where I've seamed. On the edge. Don't go around your neckline. I mean, I don't know what it'll look like. Might look pretty cool. You might start a new trend. But no, we're going for the sleeves, okay? So I'm going to start right at the very top of mine. So I'm going to take 2 of each colour, because it's good to have maybe like 6, 7, 8 strands. I'm going to take 2 of each colour and line them up. They do always get a bit tangled when you're doing this. There we go. I've got 6 strands of yarn here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab them right in the middle, like that. Right in the middle. I'm going to take my other hand and hold it about here so that we've got a loop. I'm going to grab my top. I'm going to wiggle it in through the top of the shoulder seam. And then I'm going to pull all of these yarns through this little hole. This way I can get a little bit fiddly, you see. Sometimes I find if my hook's too big, oh mind you, I don't think this one's big enough. Okay, no, it's not big enough. Hang on, let me just get a bigger hook. Do you think I should have practiced this before I came on? Probably should have practiced this. I'm going to go with a 6. Just jumped up 2 hook sizes. Me saying, oh yeah, use a small one. No, probably don't use a small one. Don't listen to me. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Oh well, trial and error. Wiggle them through. Yeah, you probably are better using a bigger hook. Look. Wiggle them through so you've got a loop. Okay, get your finger, your forefinger and your thumb in there so you can pinch and grab these loose ends. You're going to pull them through just like you're doing a knot. And then tighten it up. Now if you think, oh, that don't look very good, that looks a bit messy, you can take your time and go through each one individually to really pull it in nice and tight. But I don't really want to do mine too tight because I'm not actually sure if I'm keeping my fringe in or not just yet. And there we have tassel number 1. Although that does look pretty cool, doesn't it? That is a pretty cool tassel, let's be honest. You see, then you do have a few little scraggly ends going on here. So I'm just going to trim that a little bit. Trim up my ends. Right, should we do it one more time? I'll show you again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the next treble bar and I'm going to go into the next one. And that's what I'm going to keep doing, is I'm going to skip a treble bar, go in the next one, skip one, go in the next one. Then I'm going to look at it and think, oh yeah, I do like that actually, but I want it a bit fuller. So then if you want it a bit fuller, you can go in every single treble bar. It's just, I think it's easier to skip one first, and then it's easier to add extra if you think you need extra, rather than go all out, put it everywhere, and then you put it on, you're like, oh my gosh, I look like someone from the 80s. Not saying that that's a bad thing, because I think this 80s vibe is very, very cool. Or you think, oh, look, I've got really hairy arms or something because all this fringe is going everywhere. It's easier to add it rather than take it away. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there undoing all your tight knots and cursing yourself and being like, oh, why did I put too much on? So yeah, I'm going to do one more with you. And then that's going to be the end of the tutorial. Oh my goodness. So I'm grabbing 2 of each colour. See, if I was to add fringe, I would need a lot more than this. But I've only done a little bit because I'm not quite sure whether I'm keeping mine or not. 2 of each colour, so I've got 6 strands again. Okay, I'm going to pinch it and pick it up right in the centre, like so. Hold it with my other hand like this and bring it down a bit to form a loop. Get my hook, get my sleeve, and I'm going to miss this treble next, and I'm going to go in this one. And then this one's going to be nice and easy to pull through. Look, 'cause I'm not wiggling it through a stitch. Pull that through there, take the hook out, get my thumb and my forefinger inside this loop so that I can grab the yarn tails and pull them through like a knot. And pull it tight. And then I'm just going to trim my ends just a little bit. Like so. And there, I've got 2 on there now. I've started going around the back of mine, but that's fine. So yeah, got 2 on mine now. So keep repeating that process all the way around. Remember to skip one and then try it on and see what you think. And if you think, no, I need a bit more, then you can go back and fill in the gaps, so to speak. It's just easier to do it that way. Also, another little tip for fringe. If you have if you manage to get your hands on a pair of hair straighteners, if you put them on a low setting and just gently glide them down the tassels, down the fringe, it will make them lovely and straight. Nice little tip for you, rather than having them all scraggly. I always straighten my fringe. So yeah, that's it then. Obviously, if you're going to do it, repeat it for the other side. So yeah, thank you ever so much if you've got this far. Thank you for sticking around. And if you make one of these and you are over on Instagram, please tag me in them, because I love to see everything that you're all making. I really love it. I love it so much. So yeah, be sure to tag me, Crafting a Cuppa. Okay, so yeah, that's it. See you again soon then.